Hi, and welcome to Quoted for Truth. It is Friday, August 31st, and things are different. You might notice there's an empty seat over there. That's where John Davison used to be. John Davison is no longer with the GameSpot, so he's no longer on Quoted for Truth. It's very sad. And across from me used to be Brendan Sinclair. Last week was Peter Brown. Permanently going forward, it's Peter Brown, because Brendan Sinclair is no longer GameSpot either.
Yeah, I have to make up for John and Brendan. That's a tall order.
It is a tall task, but I think you're up to it.
I'm poised.
You are poised? So we have one other order of business to get down to before we go to the stories. This show is Quoted for Truth because we quote the truth of our listeners. So we're kind of soliciting more participation. We're going to go into the comments each week and kind of bring out the best points that like counter what we said, give another point of view. And we'll start off each show like that. And we kind of got this idea from Blackwing55 in the comments last week. He says, the one thing I hate about Quoted for Truth is I can't voice my opinion no matter how much I want to. It's honestly irritating. So we don't really care how you voice your opinion. If you want to send us a video, if you want to send us tweets, if you want to comment, like however you express yourself, we're going to try to incorporate this more and more in the shows each week.
And try to express how you guys prefer to do this, because that way we can sort of get the infrastructure set up so we can, get your comments quickly. We can get up an easy system for submitting videos or even dialing in for shows.
Oh yeah, dialing in would be fantastic. But that's for the future.
It's in the future.
For the present, we're going to talk about some big news. The top story this week, PlayStation Europe head Jim Ryan, he says the game industry must evolve to thrive. This is kind of obvious. I mean, this is true with every industry, but it's nice that somebody with so much power acknowledges that you can't do the same things over and over. So, Peter, what direction do you think the industry needs to take, and which company do you think is best equipped to lead us to the promised land?
The latter part of that is a very good question. It's a lot harder to answer. I think, the obvious is we need, this is said by everybody, but less just sequels year after year of the same thing. Sony has done a little bit of that, right, with their independent studios, kind of doing the unfinished Swan and games like that, and that's good. And I think those are the sort of things that we need to see, not just to just get those games out there, but to sort of inspire other people to make their own creative ideas, in game form. I think that's pretty important.
That is true. One thing I noticed, just like looking at the box office numbers for movies and games, it's all about the IP. It's all about, you have to have FIFA, for an outside source, or you have to have Mario from an inside source, but it's all the brand name. Movies rely on this also, but they also have directors that people know. Oh, it's a Spielberg movie, or Johnny Depp's in that movie. They have more names. We don't have that in the video game industry.
We've got a few. I mean, I think Cliff Bleszinski kind of is a driving force for a lot of people.
That's true.
And then you got the older guys like, Molyneux, who inspires some
Shigeru
of us.
Miyamoto. But I think that they're so, it's all about gamers know these people, but the general public doesn't.
True.
And I think part of the reason why, you talked about we need less sequels, but the only thing that sells is sequels because people need something they know.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, the industry needs to thrive, and that means it needs money.
Yeah.
So sequels, give them that money. That's never been the problem. The problem that comes from these sequels is the people who want something different and don't get it.
Yeah.
And so I think creatively, if he's talking about thriving in that regard, then sequels, I guess they always need to be there to maybe fund the smaller projects, right? If you look at them that way, maybe it's not the big evil that some of us make it out to be.
Well, I guess I'm hoping that like someday in the future, people will buy a new game because it's Kojima, and it doesn't matter what it is, it's just Kojima, and it can be a big seller because his name is on the box, as opposed to now where he has to make a new Metal Gear because he needs that name and not his own name. Yeah, so I guess that's the innovation I need, and we might be a way away from that.
We are. I mean, Zone of the Enders was a Kojima product. Yeah, it was very much branded with his name, and I really like those games for various reasons, but it didn't do it then. And so if you fast forward to now, where we do kind of have this greater identity with these developers, Cliff Bleszinski again is coming out with Fortnite.
Oh yeah.
There's no way to predict how well it's going to sell. People might not buy it because it's
I can predict right now.
It's not going to sell very well.
It sells 0 copies. It's a free-to-play game, Peter. 0 copies. But
fair enough. But
sorry.
That's fair. That's fair. But the install base and how passionate people get about the game, whether that comes from the game or Cliff himself, will be interesting to see.
So I asked you 2 questions. I'm going to answer the second question.
Go for it. Apple's
in the best position going forward. Because Apple, there are brilliant developers out there, absolutely brilliant. And a lot of them are indie developers, but there's also the AAA that are good. And they know how to make games. But Apple knows how to get products in people's hands so much better than Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo right now.
You know who you forgot to mention? Valve.
Valve is also very good, but they're more limited because you have to play on a PC right now. Whereas Apple, you can play anywhere, and you might be able to hook it up to your TV. It's weird because I don't own any Apple products. It's weird that I would champion them, but it's like they are so good with technology right now, and they're so good with hyping their own products so people want them. That might be the company I look forward to get tech in people's hands. And then the developers, once it's there, they can make games like Sword and Sorcery or Fortnite or whatever they need to. But I'm thinking that might be the revolution we need.
Well, I mean, so you mentioned hardware, right? But then there's also the actual development side of it, which comes from software. You've got Epic again, but with their Unreal Engine. Now that scales all the way from an iPhone up to a next gen PC. Like it's so flexible. Then you also have smaller guys like Unity who are doing stuff, and a lot like Unreal Engine, they can put these into the user's hands for free, right? And they get a certain amount of sales before they then have to pay royalties back. So we do kind of have that right now, and it's great to see sort of the indie barrier breaking down, where some of the best indie games are rivaling the worst games from larger studios.
From a tech standpoint.
From a tech, and I'd say from a quality standpoint.
I'd say from a quality, the best indie games are significantly better than the best AAA, or at least
that's
on
very fair. That's very
even
fair,
ground
yes.
at worst.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the indie. So let's see what the users say. So we got Ouroboros Choked. I don't really care what he said. I just kind of wanted to say his name because I love the Ouroboros. He says in other news this week, Ico Shadow Classic producer leaves Sony, and Sony closes down Sony Liverpool. The Vita's still collecting dust. Nice job with the innovation, boys. And it's a good point that Sony has been trying to make games arty with Shadow Classes. They've been trying to. Vita's the best tech I've ever seen for games, and it's terrible. Nobody's buying it. 2 million sold worldwide. So that's why I think we need someone else to lead us to that hardware land.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. Hardware does kind of drive a little bit of innovation. I think, was it a Sony exec who said a few weeks back that it was Ubisoft that said we need the next generation to inspire people? And, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But if you want to introduce a new IP, that might be what you need.
It's true. We also had a quote from OJ the Lion, surprisingly honest from a Sony exec, one of those who has potentially the most to lose from changes in the industry. I just wish more publishers felt that way. We do see a little innovation. EA is firmly behind the free-to-play model. That's all I can think of as far as innovation with the big guys. But yeah, I mean, you don't see much. Nintendo's always changing things because that's kind of the only way they can compete is by changing the rules.
And so our next comment is from a guy, Gangstar VX84. Talks about Medieval for a second, but then he goes, innovation just leads me to believe we're going to be touchscreening, waving our hands about, picking up the PS4, tilting it to turn a corner in a racing game. All of that is about as appealing as dying in a fire. Instead of innovating and changing how we play games, they should focus on changing the games themselves. So like you said, Nintendo, yes, they're innovating the hardware side. Software, they've kind of stuck to their guns, as they always have. They haven't really done a whole lot to I mean, I'd say Pikmin was their last great innovation in gaming, and that happened a decade ago. Yeah,
that's a good point. This next story, this also deals with innovation.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so essentially, the lead designer for Spec Ops: The Line, Corey Davis, said that multiplayer was forced into the game as almost a checkbox item for Take-Two. So, Tom, how do you feel about that just being thrown in there for sales purposes? Or, considering a lot of people are mentioning they're not even playing the multiplayer.
Yeah, I think the first time I remember playing a game where it felt like there was the checkbox multiplayer was BioShock 2. Mm-hmm. And it's a game I actually really enjoyed the multiplayer, weirdly enough. It kind of played like GoldenEye. But it's been a trend since then because when you read message boards and stuff, people talk about quantity a lot.
Yeah.
And quantity is partially you get it from Elder Scrolls, which gives you tons and tons of solo player stuff. And you also get it from multiplayer, which is infinite. So I think that checkbox is important for people to have. Like, I want to spend $60 on a game. I want something that'll last more than an hour or two, or Spec Ops lasts 7 hours. So I think that's why it exists. But I mean, as this guy argues, like it's not good because you're devoting resources away from the core of the game.
That's partially true. I mean, they did outsource the multiplayer, so at least in terms of manpower, they weren't hindered. But the dollar speaks, right? So
yeah,
that kind of maybe because some more resources could have been put into the game. But I think that game accomplished a lot with its narrative, where it was very different from traditional shooters. And it's kind of odd that they talk a lot about how they brought people into that game just to sort of let them fall into their own trap, right? Mm-hmm. They expect one thing and they get another. but then they better make sure that they have that thing in there that they were looking for.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, seems a little strange.
Yeah, I guess one of the things with me with that, I mean, that game was all about like turning the military genre on its head and kind of like holding up the mirror and saying this is what it means to be a hero.
Yeah,
and it's not always a good thing. By adding a multiplayer mode that's the same kind of stupid run around shooting people with no real consequences, it kind of took away from their message. So I guess like for me, because I mean we did an interview with the lead writer and he was like, "This is stupid," and now the lead designer is saying this is stupid, and I just feel that it's like antithetical to their whole point of the game. So I'm disappointed that Take-Two had the balls to say we want to publish this game, didn't have the balls to say we want to publish this game and make it single player only.
Yeah. Darksaber2K says, it's another game rammed onto the disc like a cancerous growth. I like these guys more and more, even after the pleasant surprise of being someone who got ambushed due to my expectations. The message there is maybe publishers should give the developers a little bit more leeway in terms of decision making.
Yeah, I think we're going through the same thing. Take-Two, again, coming up, BioShock Infinite just cut their multiplayer mode, and I wonder if it's kind of just... You don't expect multiplayer in a BioShock game.
Right.
And it's like if it's not working, I wish they had the freedom to just
people aren't going to buy that game for the multiplayer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So what's the big deal about having that on the box?
I know.
I don't see the importance. People go to games like BioShock, and maybe other games that'll be like Spec Ops: The Line, obviously for the narrative, right? I mean, for the world, for the story. The multiplayer, like you said, it extends the value, but only so much.
And I guess it's for me, like in the world of online only multiplayer, it's hard because you're not going to find a match. Whereas back in the day with like Turok 2, it's like if you have 3 friends, you're going to play multiplayer Turok 2, and that's fine, and it justifies its existence. But like BioShock, the community would be dead anyway in a week.
Yeah, everyone's playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, or Halo 4.
Right,
or
yeah, exactly.
Team Fortress or Dota. It's like there's these established heavyweights, and you just got to do your own thing.
Yeah.
I like Dark Comedian's comment. He says that's a bit more honesty than I'm used to. I'm glad one developer had the gumption to do so. And that's true. A lot of developers just are scared to speak out, I think, because they need a job.
Yeah.
And they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. But I really appreciated this honesty because it kind of shows what it's like sometimes to be a AAA developer.
And, you know, maybe Take-Two can learn something from these comments.
Yeah, I mean, I already BioShock Infinite. Like, maybe we'll see.
Maybe we'll see.
We'll see if GTA 5 has like a tacked on multiplayer mode like GTA 4 did. But I'm guessing it won't, or it'll be like a really interesting one.
We'll see. I mean, Max Payne 3 had it.
Well, yeah, that's a shooter. So we're gonna move on to the next story here. Unless you have something else to say.
No, let's do it. Let's go.
So there are now free-to-play games on consoles. EA's been saying this is the coming. This is the future for every time they open their mouth. And now Microsoft has said, hey, maybe there's a chance it is, and we're gonna get free-to-play games on the 360. There's a catch. You need to have a gold subscription, so you have to pay to play free-to-play games. And Microsoft's defense is, a lot of these games are on my multiplayer, but that's a really weak defense.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess the big question, like the bigger question, is like, how do you feel about your consoles being infected with this new, for good or bad, they're being infected with this new business model?
I don't know if it's for good or bad because I can pretend it's not there, right? I don't have to, unless the games that I'm looking for are sort of like shoehorned into this free-to-play model. I can just pretend it doesn't exist. Now, whether or not that's good for the industry at large is a different story, you know, because as trends go, things will change as they pick up. But personally, I know I can just step back and just pretend that they don't exist.
See, I love that route.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work beyond myself.
It does. Well, I guess the problem is this is something I've been talking about for a long time now. It's very, very close to my heart. iOS games cost $1. Valve has sales where you can get brand new games for $5. Yep. I think that the value of what a game is worth has gone down so much that when a good game like Dusk Elysian Tale comes out for $15, people are like, I'm going to wait for the sale and get it for $10. Which is absurd to me because these games are worth $10, $15, $20. Games are worth $60 sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I think if there's like a lot of free-to-play games, it's going to be even more difficult for $60 retail games to sell because people are going to just get their 5-10 hours of enjoyment and not spend a dime and then move on to something else, and that ultimately hurts the industry.
There are weird models at play here. I mean, $60 games are generally physical, you know, releases. The ones that really sell and make a lot of money are, you know, they've had millions of dollars poured into them.
Yep.
A lot of these free-to-play games, have a lot of effort and people, put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, but it doesn't always amount to the same commitment from the publisher, whoever's funding it.
But is that also bad though? Like, don't you want people like committed to doing the best thing possible?
The games are so ubiquitous now. Seemingly everybody is making games, right?
Yeah.
So when you say that the value is disappearing, I feel like it's almost the spectrum is larger now. And the value has changed compared to, say, 20 years ago, when that was your only option, was to pay that much money for a game. Now, if you want to get the game into someone's hands, maybe make a name for yourself, and it's a free-to-play game, and that's the only way you can do it, that might be all you can do.
Yeah, I just really, because it's like, I'm gonna quote John Davison. So he tweeted this week something about, The World Ends With You. Is that what that game's called? The Square rhythm game?
The Theater Rhythm?
No, I think it's The World Ends With You.
The one that the iOS port, yeah.
I'm blanking on the name. Came to iOS at $20, and he was just aghast. He was appalled that a game would be that much money. That game is awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't we spend $20 and not feel guilty?
Is it a guilt thing, or is it a... Because that's a tough question. I'm not saying the game isn't worth $20, but when you're competing in a marketplace like that and you're trying to gain a foothold, it's almost shooting yourself in the foot, and it almost makes you look ignorant to do something like that. And sometimes it's about perception. If people see that and they feel like you don't understand what you're doing, they might not be inclined to pick up your game.
You just said the magic word. It's all about perception and free-to-play and Valve sales. And iOS gaming is all making the perception of games is worthless.
I just don't feel that way. It's such a different model to
I know.
me. It's such a different model.
I'm so negative, aren't I? So, I mean, Burzak0912. I'm still paying for Xbox Live. Technically, that's not free. That's like the big... What is Microsoft thinking with this? Like, if they want to do an expanded audience, expand the damn audience. You don't limit it to this.
I think that's the bigger problem, is that we have to pay for Live as it is, and these free-to-play games should be a part of it. But at this point, if you're an Xbox gamer and you're trying to do anything on there, beyond the basic functionality, you're already gonna be a gold member.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, if you want Netflix, you need to be gold. But
if
it still just seems kind of ridiculous.
It is. It's kind of misleading, right? Free to play, but I have to pay something.
Carpet Fluff kind of echoes what you said. I don't see the harm in this. It's twisting no one's arm, and if some of the games are decent, then that's a good thing. If they're not your thing, you can just ignore it. And I mean, it's totally reasonable, but I am not always reasonable. I just think games are awesome, and I think games are worth lots of money, and I want people to shell out money for games.
I agree with you, but here's the thing, right? You have all these free-to-play games. They exist for a reason, and that reason is that they should make money. Somebody is getting the money for these games. To assume that the people making them aren't getting due compensation, I think
they are.
Right. So
Valve's not stupid. If they're doing Dota 2 free-to-play, that's because they are going to make money off of it, more so than if it was $50.
So then where does the question of value come in? Are the people who make the games earning enough to continue doing what they love and pump that into things that we will then love? Or is it almost like, I see this game as being worth this much money, and how dare you pay less for it?
Like, I keep bringing up this game, and it's weird because I don't actually like Red Dead Redemption, but it is an amazing game. Mm-hmm. If there's like this, every game is going for $1, or it's free to play, or it's $10 most, what's going to convince Rockstar to spend tens of millions of dollars and years of blood, sweat, and tears making something like Red Dead Redemption? Like, it's not going to be financially worthwhile if they can make...
It's going to be GameStop pre-order bonuses, Tom.
Yeah, but it's like such a big commitment to make these games, these big games that I love, and I don't know if developers are going to have that willingness to sink in millions of dollars and potentially lose it all if it bombs.
I just see the market diverging. I guess I don't see it as one way or the other.
Yeah, I always take an side, but we'll move on to the next case. We can always agree about death, right?
Yeah. So in Dishonored, one of the big parts about the game is that you can kill people or you cannot kill people, kind of like Metal Gear, right?
Kind of like real life.
Kind of like real life. You have a choice. And so in the game, the way it plays out, according to, let's see, what's his name here? Ralph Colantonio.
Nice pronunciation.
Arcane Studio, thank you. The creative director at Arcane Studios is talking about how death in the game by your hand carries more weight as the story moves on. And so the question is, is death handled properly in games? This is one approach where it's like, okay, it has a consequence, but is the consequence enough? Can death be taken to a more realistic extent in terms of the consequences that come from it. I know this is very close, to your heart.
This is a very close issue to me. I guess I'm going to start like big picture. Death is still handled for the most part like coin-op games, like arcade games, or it's like a punitive thing. You didn't make this jump, you die, like that kind of way, and then you restart right away. We now have infinite lives in most games, but it's the same basic concept. There's not, I don't want to say there's no thought, but there's very little thought, I think, put into the death model for most games. You die, you come back. You die, you come back.
Well, so what he's talking about is the killing of others.
Yes.
So I think player death is a little bit different because that very much ties into, I guess, like the other way around, what sort of game you're playing.
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, this issue comes up for me because I think war games handle death really poorly.
Yes.
Because war, it's modeled off of a real thing. And in real life, death is a very big thing. It's a final thing. Yeah. So when you have the way it's portrayed for the player where they come right back, or the enemy where it's just, Hogan's Alley, basically, in Call of Duty and games like that, where you don't feel the consequences, I think it's really diminishing what they're trying to create, like a war experience. So that's the one genre I think you got to kind of reinvent the wheel with this. You got to think about what you're doing.
Do you think there's room for two worlds to exist? One where there is for lack of a better word, a game that fetishizes war, and a game that actually gives it an honest, analysis? Because you're gonna find people who will support both, and I think when that's the case, both will get made.
Kevin Van Orden and I talk about this a lot because I'm on like the extreme end of I don't want any war game that fetishizes war because I think that's really dangerous and damaging to a culture.
Yeah, I don't think it's good for anybody.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean people don't like it.
No, people do like it,
right.
But I think people also like heroin.
Yeah, they do. That's why it exists.
They have to be separated from things they like. I mean, it's a terrible comparison, but it's like, I think people can have enjoyment in shooters that are not war games and just like, they can play Halo and they can play Half-Life and these other games that take a more cartoonish, unrealistic, alien slant. And then the war games, I think, just like when you look at movies now, there's not these movies that trivialize war and death. Like they don't really do that anymore. Those are movies that used to be made in the 50s, but now it's like there's real consequence, and that's a little more mature. And that's the step I want us to take.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are more games than just war games out there. So I mean, I do like that this developer, even though it's been done before, I like that they're thinking about death.
Yeah. No, look. I mean, like I said, I'm kind of in the camp where I think both have a place in the market.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree that if there is a studio that can find a way to handle death respectfully and convey the weight and that it carries for not even the person who's dying, but everyone around them, that's an important thing that hasn't really been accomplished that I can think of. Like
in a war game or in general? In
general, in a way that actually conveys to the user the emotion and
Well, one of the ways it does it, like Fire Emblem. I think I'm right about Fire Emblem. Like when you lose a character, it's permanent.
It is permanent, yeah.
And like that kind of resonates a little bit stronger than when they come right back with the Phoenix down.
So sometimes I'll play Fire Emblem, and in the first match I'll lose a guy. At that point, I don't really know anything about them. I have no connection, and my only loss is that's one less troop I have going forward. But
like when you're
invested
15 hours in the game, then I mean that's like one way to actually have weight is to have this permanent death thing.
Is to miss somebody.
Right. Yes, it's to miss someone. I mean, playing Lone Survivor, when you die, you lose all your progress, and you have to like start from the last save point, and like that's really punishing. But then it's like you feel real fear then.
But so here's a question: if there is something to be said for games that really do this justice, do you see a game that starts off with death, where the whole game is almost like a David Cage type interactive thing, where it is everyone dealing with the person's death? Maybe it's like that movie I'm drawing a blank on right now, where Jimmy Stewart dies and he has to,
It's a Wonderful Life?
Yeah, if It's a Wonderful Life, he's going to kill himself. He sees what will happen.
Yeah,
that sort of thing in a game. Do you think that that's a way that could do it respectfully?
That would actually be pretty interesting, wouldn't it?
And no one's done that, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of approaches to take, and this kind of goes with Sony's innovation thing, and it kind of goes with the expanded audience of giving people something different than the way Mario handles death in Call of Duty. So I think I would like to see a push in the direction. We don't have a lot of comments for the story.
Yeah, there's a little bit of misunderstanding, but
Never Named did give us something. I'm loving these guys. They have a good grasp of what's right and what's not within the medium these days, and are able to express these thoughts without sounding pretentious or self-centered. Pretentious is, of course, the dirtiest of dirty words. And I think that we're both looking forward to what Arcane Studios are going to do with this Dishonored game.
I've played a little bit of it, and that game is incredible from what I've seen.
Nice.
I can't wait to play more, honestly.
Okay, so we're going to go to one last story here. The most preposterous story of the week. PC gaming not dead, says Maxis. So Maxis lead producer Kip Casarelis, he said that PC gaming isn't dead because Diablo 3 and The Sims sell so well. Peter, what the hell? Like, what the hell? Seriously?
I've been saying PC gaming's dead, but now I'm convinced otherwise. I mean, like, this is a no-brainer, and I think going beyond those titles, PC gaming has never been dead, is not dead now, and I don't think this guy needs to remind us of that.
The thing that was absurd is he pointed to, like, 2 big franchises to say it's not dead. That doesn't mean anything. If Call of Duty sells 1 million, it doesn't mean anything.
No.
Like, the reason PC gaming is exceptional is because you can make a game like Lone Survivor by one dude, and it will sell well enough to support that one dude. Like that.
More than just sell, it'll be published in a way that people can access it.
Like that's so awesome that like people can reach, because it's like if you want to make games for the 360 or PS3, you have this barrier of entry.
Yeah.
You have to pay. You know, there's licensing fees, there's certification fees, there's all this other nonsense.
Yeah.
PC gaming is just so pure. It's just developers speaking directly to the gamer, and I love that. And it's so weird that someone would actually have to say it's not dead because it's an amazing platform.
I'd say it's like the ham radio of the platforms, but ham radio's dead.
Oh, no, don't say that, then. Yeah, it's one of those things like going forward. Like, I'm terrified about mobile gaming, even though I mentioned Apple before. I'm terrified because I don't like touchscreen.
You don't like change.
Well, I don't mind change. I don't like touchscreen.
I'm just trying to incite something.
I'm terrified about the consoles because I don't think people buy consoles anymore. I think they buy Apple products. I am really confident that PC gaming in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years is going to be phenomenal. Because that's like the one constant, is that we're going to get great, awesome indie games that push the limit or don't push the limit and are affordable, and just new business models, old business models. We're going to get everything you can imagine on the PC, and I love that, and I have confidence at least.
So we've got Cremus, oh no, who is it? Nicola2 saying that consoles are just overpriced toys. Since everyone needs a computer, why not just buy a high-end one for games? All you need is one machine to run all your games, no matter how old they are.
Yeah, Tesla has a good point here. But I mean, this is kind of why I brought up the Apple thing, because not everyone wants to sit at a desk with a keyboard, and not everyone has the ability to plug their computer into their HD TV.
But not everyone wants to game on a handheld device either.
Yeah, but if you could plug in a controller, if you could hook it up to the TV, like it comes.
If you could have a console that you hook up to the TV.
It comes everywhere with you is the thing. It's like if I buy a Wii U, and I will eventually, but that's stuck in my family room. Whereas if
Wii U,
if I ever actually buy an Apple product, I can at least take it with me when I go on vacation or to work and whatever. Like, I think that's kind of what this guy's getting at is
Apple needs to make strides. All right, you talk about the interface being a problem.
That's an understatement.
So the consoles and PCs now are seeing a lot of overlap. You don't see, I guess, keyboards on a console very often, but you do see everyone using their 360 controller on a PC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of people have kind of said that in the future we may have a one console system. Until somebody else fails, I don't see that as being a reality until Sony or Nintendo drops out. I mean, Microsoft is kind of tied into the PC space, even more so with Windows 8 coming out. I'd say, I would wager their next generation might be their last Xbox. You might start seeing PCs with that stuff just built into it.
Yeah. My whole thing with the next Xbox is I think it should just be a modded version of the Surface that hooks up to the TV and is portable. This would be the brilliant idea. I don't think Microsoft's going to do it.
Well, I mean, right now Apple does have they are porting some games to their Apple TV that you can then use on the TV,
which is like Ouya basically, but it already exists and it's not going to fail.
Right. I don't know that Ouya is going to fail.
We'll
it's too early to call. Have you seen that thing? It's pretty tiny.
It is pretty tiny.
It's pretty cute. Cute things sell. But you know, I did like this one comment from, let's see, his name is The Keef. Fear not, I can translate. On behalf of EA, I've become good at reading the tea leaves. So here's what he believes that guy was saying. Look, we think microtransaction gaming is the future, along with pay DLC for free-to-play titles. We can target 2 billion gamers at a time with free-to-play content and make them pay to get any depth out of their incomplete free game. This market isn't dying. It's a gold mine we just haven't noticed until recently. Sincerely, some douchey suit type.
I like that a lot.
So I mean that kind of mirrors what you were saying, how you mentioned these two titles that sell really, really well, and then that's indication to him that, oh yeah, look, there is this install base that we can tap into.
Exactly. You know what a weird story? If Maxis said that PC gaming was dead. I don't know. Did they ever make console games? I know there's like SimCity on the consoles, but I don't even know if they make it. It's probably ported by BioWare Vermont or something.
Yeah.
We also had a comment from El Jefe de Medios, the boss of the middle, maybe. PC gaming will never die, but DRM ruined single player and will kill off games quick.
I was struggling with games for Windows Live yesterday, just trying to play Arkham City on a test laptop.
Yeah.
Furious. Telling me I need to update, and I'm really savvy with PCs. It's rare I run into an issue I can't solve. I followed all their instructions, restart, update, all this and that, and I eventually had to go dig into forums and go through all that. And this is just so that they could have it under their Games for Windows moniker, /DRM.
Yeah. The piracy thing.
Give me a break.
Just you're only hurting the consumers, Ubisoft and everyone else who does this stuff. You're only hurting the consumers.
Piracy is going to happen.
Back off.
Whether they try to, it's happening with all their DRM anyway.
Yes.
So what is it worth all the money and the pain that they're causing all their users?
But despite the DRM, PC gaming thrives. Let's do some quick hits.
All right.
Okay, so Metal Gear turned 25.
Woo!
There's a lot of announcements regarding Metal Gear yesterday. Or 2 days ago. This is Friday. So first off, they're making a movie. What do you think about this?
Woo! They've been talking about it for a while. They've now attached the producer from X-Men, Iron Man. So, there's some pedigree going along there.
Double Dragon, if I'm not mistaken. The Double Dragon movie.
Really?
I think so.
Oh, jeez. But he, Kojima's eyeing Hugh Jackman and potentially Matt Damon and Ben Affleck based on comments he made at the show.
They'll be lucky to get Eric Roberts.
I think Hugh Jackman would make a good Snake.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
So, the catty answer, they already make movies. So second thing they announced, a card battle mobile game.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Social Ops.
Yeah.
I think it sounds awesome, but I like card battles.
I do too. No, I think it's fine. They need to capitalize. They're working with Gree on this.
Yeah.
Who is the biggest publisher of the social games in Japan. So
it's a good idea. And the third thing they announced, an open world stealth game called Ground Zeroes.
I like to think of it as Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes.
It's not bad. Are you excited for this?
No.
Okay, I'm excited because I don't know what it's going to be like.
Yeah, see, I really like Metal Gear. And when I say that, I mean Metal Gear proper. I do like as it transitioned into the Solid series, but I've tried to play 4 twice, and it's not the game I like. For many of the same reasons Sean McInnes mentioned in his article last month. If they seem to be just going so far away from the old stealth model that I guess maybe it'll be great, but
we'll see with that one. I'm intrigued.
I'm more interested in the story.
There you go. And the biggest announcement, Metal Gear Long John's. I've got mine pre-ordered. How about you?
2 pair, both colors.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, that's an image you painted. So we're gonna wrap up this week's Quote for Truth. Thanks for tuning in, and flood us with comments. See you next week.
Goodbye.